Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Alicia Michelson, and I am the Artistic Director at Peninsula School of Art in Fish Creek, Wisconsin. I am very excited to introduce our newest artists in residence, Zeja Copes and Diana No. Zeja and Diana will be joining us for a total of 6 weeks in an immersive studio experience that prioritizes time and space for them to engage fully in their creative practice, experiment, and pursue new projects and ideas. Today, we have the opportunity to get to know each of them through brief image presentations. First, we'll hear from Zeja Copes. Zeja is a painter and fiction writer. Her work explores the intersection between horror and everyday boredom. She is interested in bookmaking, traditional illustration, and the many ways to tell a scary story. Zeja earned her BFA in art and creative writing from Carnegie Mellon University. She recently exhibited her work at the Pittsburgh Zine Fair, and the Peninsula School of Art is her first residency. Take it away, Zeja.
Thank you, Alicia, for that lovely introduction. And now I will get started showing off some of my work. So, as was mentioned, I am primarily a painter and printmaker with a focus on oil painting and screen printing. So first, this piece is titled Boogaloo. It is an oil painting from 2020, and it is a painting of my little brother and one of our dogs, Fana. I feel like this piece is representative of my practice for several reasons. One being it includes my little brother, who is usually the model for my work because he is the person I have on hand. And second, because of the way that it plays with color and texture and these more abstracted, dreamlike backgrounds that don't necessarily communicate a specific place, but do communicate a sense of mood and texture. This next piece is titled Hang on Me. Here, I tried to be a little bit more restrained in terms of how I was applying paint to the canvas because what will usually happen is I apply so much of it in such thick layers that I don't really get the viewer doesn't really get to see the underlayers of the painting and where it started from as much. So I pulled myself back a bit in addition to sort of abstracting the planes of the human body. And I think it turned out pretty well. These two paintings, they are a diptych, Blackberry Luster 1 and 2. And I am always interested in how still images can communicate a sense of narrative, a sense of relationship between two figures, and especially a sense of intimacy, as you can see in Blackberry Luster number 2, with the two figures sort of holding each other. And once again, I was trying to more readily control the sort of drips and spatters that show up in my work anyway, and be more intentional about where they're placed and how they interact with the figures themselves. And here is a screen print of Big Baby 1 and 2 that I created back in 2021. Yes, 2021. It is a 3-layer screen print. It's a bit hard to see on the screen, but there is actually a transparent glossy layer on the black paper to act as the shadows of the piece. And this one was a really fun, quick thing to churn out. And what I like best about it is that I captured the likeness of one of our other dogs, Swoosh. And another screen print here. This one is more recent. It is from this year. It's titled The Miracle. This one, I believe, has 10 layers of ink on 10 layers of screen printing. And here I was playing around with different levels of transparency to stand in for highlights and shadows. And I was really excited to work with this sort of candy pastel color scheme because that is the one I gravitate towards most. I rarely paint my figures in actual human skin tones. I much prefer diving into the blues and greens and purples just because I feel like it gives my pieces a sense of whimsy and otherworldliness. And I like that what I depict is already just by color palette alone removed a step or two from our known reality, even if it is depicting familiar subjects. And this piece is another screen print titled Spectre. I completed it earlier this year in 2022. This is a 3 layers screen print, and this one I was really just enticed by that acid green color of the paper and want to figure out how can I make that pop as much as possible. And that led the piece as a whole to take on a sort of nightmarish quality because I do love dreams, the unconscious, nightmares, anything that can imply dread and horror. So I went leaned fully into that with the female figure being overtaken by the vines. And to fed into some of the work I'll be focusing on in my residency, this painting is untitled. I have been working on it since 2020 and it is still not done because I keep coming back to it, then ignoring it again, and it's not complete, although it is currently hanging in my parents' living room at home. And I am just enamored with this idea of an image of two people lying in a bed of violets and one of them screaming. And I cannot for the life of me figure out a way to satisfyingly resolve it. So during this residency, I'm going to see if I can find some way to take this idea that has plagued me for almost 3 years now, to take it and make a finished artwork out of it. That is one of my residency goals. And these are two zines I created for the Pittsburgh Zine Fair. That it is which is a small press and zine expo that is held in Pittsburgh typically every year. They took a break because of COVID, but they were able to come back this year, and I was able to vend with one of my friends. And these are two zines that are short stories, illustrated and written by me and put up for sale. And it was very fun to delve more into the strictly illustration side of making an artwork and also have a text to accompany it. So for these, I produced the original illustrations in watercolor, such as this one, that this is an illustration for a new gloom. And I chose watercolor because I want to learn how to use watercolor. I'm still relatively new to oil painting, having only been an oil painter for about 4 years now, but that is where my comfort zone is, and watercolor is not. So that is one of the ways I have chosen to push myself now in this residency and beyond as I try to figure out this very transparent, finicky medium. And here is another illustration from A New Gloom. This would have been, yes, the last watercolor illustration I made for that zine. And I think I finally started getting a hang of the paints themselves in terms of actually getting them to do what I want them to do, getting them to produce the colors I want them to produce. So ending on that note, for this residency, I will be focusing again on practicing watercolors at a larger scale and getting more comfortable with those, getting more comfortable trying to communicate details with those as well. And I will see where that takes me. And on that note, I will shift things over to Diana. Thank you for listening to me talk about my work.
Thank you, Zeja. Also in residence is Diana No. Diana is an interdisciplinary artist. Her practice celebrates reconstruction of distressed photographs of architectural spaces and nature, exploring themes of trauma embedded in her family relationships and cultural in-betweenness. Diana has exhibited work in Asia and North America, including Cranbrook Academy of Arts Museum in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, Viz Art in Rockville, Maryland, and Ara Art Center in Seoul, South Korea. Diana holds a BFA from Kyungil University in South Korea and MFA from Cranbrook Academy of Art. I'll hand it off to her.
Thank you. So this is my work that is called self-portrait. It's actually my first attempt to try to get rid of the rectangular frame. Personally, I really hate puzzles. I don't know why I moved into this realm and tried to work with puzzly stuffs, but I guess it's just overcoming my weaknesses and stuff like that. When I first planned to do this piece, it was actually really just in the rectangular form, but still have like a little bit of gaps on it. But I work really intuitively, so my work just leads me to what it wants to be, I will say. So this is one of those pieces that I did that I really, really love, but it's also kind of fragile because it's printed on matte paper. I mainly work on canvas paper these days, so it's way more delicate. So I'm super careful about that. I didn't even install it in my house because I was too worried it's gonna get ruined. And this is my first piece that I collaborated with my dad. I do not have that close relationship with my dad in the emotional level because he's just a ordinary Korean dad that kind of doesn't blend in with my personality, I would say. He takes photographs for hobbies and he's trying to be a professional photographer right now. I guess my side of my photographer side comes from my dad's family because my grandpa was also did also photograph for fun. So this is Oregon, where I was also born. I just thought since a lot of my anxieties come from related to my dad, I asked him, "Hey, Dad, do you mind if I use your photograph and we can collaborate?" And I love oceans, like any type of water form. It really comforts me. So this is that collaboration piece. Also, my first attempt to do something after I bought a sewing machine. I have my sewing machine for 2 years at this point, and I'm still exploring, totally self taught, but having a lot of fun. This is one of my pieces that I really love from my first year of grad school in Cranbrook. I love exploring other mediums of paper types. So this was one of those experimental works. This is a place called Greek Theater and nearby. It's actually in the Cranbrook Forest grounds. And I just love walking because it gives me a lot of inspirations. So I was walking one day and I was like, yeah, maybe I will take a photograph here. And that's how I took this photograph. And this part with that ribbon, I actually stood there and like waved it to get a perfect photograph. I did a lot of making photographs in my undergrad, but as I came to my grad school, I did more physical stuff after I printed out my stuff. So this is kind of in between transit um, phase of it. One of my pieces that I sold in my studio sale back in my MFA program. This is also kind of experimental work. I usually don't use frames, but this was donated from somebody when I was in my grad school. And so it was this frame that was kind of beat up. It's not that obvious if you see in the photograph, but there was a little cracks and it didn't had any backings or like glasses on top. And I thought, yeah, maybe it will go really well with my work and it really resonated with me. So I just picked it up and I just measured the frame and printed my work into so it can fit into it. And as just I do, I worked kind of intuitively. Also, there's this shard of my self portrait that is embedded in the work. If you see kind of really detailed, there's some of my body parts in it. And I really didn't usually enjoy revealing myself in my work. Like, self portrait is not my language, I will say, actually photographing myself. But I'm trying to find a sweet spot in between using metaphors that are symbolic and actually having myself, like parts of myself, into my work. So it will be more it will be more easier to give a hint to the audience that what I am actually trying to say. My piece that is called Dance. This was also, I made it at the same time with my play series, the previous one with the Greek theater photograph. This was taken Lake Michigan, and I was just amazed because in Korea there's a lot of seagulls in the ocean and there was a lot of Canadian goose in the lake. So I thought, oh, they're just like seagulls in the lake. And I love animals. They're another inspiration for me. So I same use the same ribbon too. And this is when I actually thought started to burn my work as to show the damage, the emotional damage and trauma embedded in my work. I was always kind of thinking, how can I show this visibly? Because emotions and feelings of self is really abstract and it's really hard to depict and it's really different for everyone. So, yeah. And I will say this is maybe my first and last self portrait series that I will make as having myself actually in the photograph. When I was in my grad school program, I got a lot of feedbacks about, yeah, we don't see what you're actually talking about. So I think should be more bold and straightforward. And I keep having this like feedback. You gotta use a portrait. You gotta use an actual human figure in your work. And I was like, okay, let's try it. And if I don't like it, I won't do it. And if it works, thank God. So this is actually what I tried. I really hate myself when I see my photographs because I'm really horrible taking photographs. Like I don't even take selfies. But I don't know. I actually kind of really like this piece, maybe because I look like my mom in this photograph. And I do also enjoy the combinations I did with black and white and color photography, and also just the playfulness I played with. Kind of looks detached, but kind of also looks like shards. So, and this is another piece that was with that I made at the same time with play and dance. This is called Luna Halo. I love moons. My name Diana also comes from my parents named it from the goddess of moon, I think. Um, yeah, so I really appreciate moons. I love using natural lights in my work, but for this one, I used this like small flashlight that my dad gave to me. And because of the temperature is kind of different, the light temperature is different, it kind of gives this fun, really contrast color iteration that I really enjoyed. One of my biggest piece that I made, called Hourglass. This was actually photographed in Belle Isle, which is an island in Detroit, between like Canada and Detroit. Um, I just love to walk around. And this day, I think it was really early after I started my grad program. And I forgot because I lived in Korea for a while and then it took a while for me to come back to the States. I forgot how huge the state was. I just parked my car at the entrance of the park and I was just walking around and I realized, okay, I'm never going to explore this entire island by today. And I think it was like 3 hours of me walking in that island. And I found this weird place that was kind of looked abandoned. And I was okay, but there were no like trespassing signs. So I was like, maybe I will go in and explore. And I walked in. I really love the messiness and hollowness kind of tied in together and it looked kind of somewhat balanced for me. And I saw myself in that as well. So I waited until the sunset started because I wanted to mix this like different times together. So yeah. And the sewing process was really hard because as I said before, I hate puzzling and I don't think I can make this again because I made it really like randomly too. But one of the pieces that I really, really love. And this was my thesis piece that I had for my graduate show. Um, it was this place was a abandoned place in Detroit. I actually went there with my partner. We asked around the neighborhood if it is safe and if it's okay to walk in because there was no like fences or like trespassing signs, but it was so obvious that nobody lived there. Um, and we were like, okay, let's go explore. And I just knew when I walked into the space that okay, this is gonna be my thesis photograph because I had this like I didn't knew what I was gonna use for my graduate photograph, and I was like, I don't know, but yeah, it just happened, and this is pretty much all of the stuff that I did in my grad school, cutting off pieces, using hand stitching and machine stitching together. I used like two different canvas paper types because I thought maybe if I use the transparent paper too, it will be too much. And just a lot of material explorations and cuts and trying to make it look three-dimensional, but actually it's kind of two-dimensional. And this is my most recent piece that I got a commission work from my thesis piece. It was really hard because it was my first commission piece and I didn't knew what I was doing. But thankfully, um, they were really like sweet. My clients were really sweet, and I was talking with them a lot about trying to meet in the middle, what they want and what I can offer. And this is also my first work that I worked with copper. I want to call it metalsmithing, but I don't think it's that kind of a high level. It's just like me trying to self teach myself and just scribbling in my studio. So for this piece, I chopped copper plates that I ordered, and I hammered that in too. So it doesn't show off in this photograph that much, but it has this like sheen. And as you kind of like move around, it kind of shifts. And I thought that's really charming. And yeah, this is the combination of my thesis photograph and an abandoned zoo in Detroit, and I try really hard to kind of make them feel like it's one space, but still kind of different. That was all my work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Diana. It was a pleasure to hear from both of you today. Toward the end of their residency, we will be hosting an in-person end of session studio tour. If any of you tuning in are in the area, I hope you will join us and see what Zeja and Diana have been working on. Thank you again. Please follow us on social media for behind the scenes updates on Zeja and Diana's time with us.